The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, the most influential economic book of all time. In economic theory, what exactly is the invisible hand? Do you really know how a free market operates? How did mercantilism lead to the useless hoarding of gold and silver? These concepts and others are brought to light in Adam Smith's magnum opus, The Wealth of Nations. A Scottish philosopher and economist writing in the 18th century, Smith is considered the father of modern economics, with his advocacy for a free market and limited government intervention, positions that many pundits argue for even today. In these parts, you'll discover why Smith felt the key to a nation's prosperity was found in a free market. Issues of taxation, free trade and the concept of economic self-interest are all addressed in Smith's insightful treatise. In these parts, you'll discover why being selfish can actually be economically beneficial for society. Why no one should ever grow wine in Scotland. How a division of labor can increase productivity by a factor of over 2,000. Key idea 1. A division of labor increases productivity. A marketplace enables people to specialize. Imagine you want to start a factory to produce pins, and hire an uneducated worker to produce them. Your initial thought might be that simplicity in the task would lead to efficiency. However, the reality is starkly different. Your worker, despite his efforts, performs all 18 steps in the process of making one pin by himself, and the result is rather poor. He barely produces a single pin in a workday. This outcome is not due to a lack of effort but because the task, when not divided, becomes highly inefficient. But what if you hired a team of 18 uneducated workers, employing a division of labor, so that each worker specializes in one of the 18 steps? This strategy fundamentally changes the dynamics of production. Each worker, focusing on a single step, becomes highly skilled and efficient in that specific task. The question then arises, would the result be just 18 pins per day? Not really. The team could produce almost 50,000 pins a day. Such a dramatic increase in productivity showcases the power of specialization and the division of labor. A division of labor significantly increases productivity. But how does it work? Essentially, when one worker has to switch between many different types of work, it costs time. This is not merely a matter of seconds or minutes lost. It represents a significant drain on efficiency because each switch requires a mental reset, a change in tools, and a shift in focus. By employing a division of labor, one worker can focus on one skill, and that wasted time is turned instead into productive time. Moreover, this focus fosters a deeper understanding of the task, leading to faster execution and fewer mistakes. What's more, people are more likely to innovate in areas where their whole attention is devoted to a specific task. This innovation is not just about making minor improvements but can lead to significant breakthroughs that enhance productivity. For example, the first fire engines were greatly improved when a boy employed a string to open and shut the truck's water valve. This might seem like a small tweak, yet it had a profound impact on efficiency. Unsurprisingly, the boy's job before this invention was to manually open and shut the valve. His focused role allowed him to see a better solution, showcasing how specialization encourages innovation. As productivity increases, a surplus of unwanted products often results, which can be then traded away. This phenomenon underlies the basic principle of trade and economic exchange. For instance, a butcher who finds himself with a surplus of meat could trade the meat for bread from the baker. However, direct barter has its limitations. But what about products that aren't in demand? What if the baker doesn't want the butcher's meat? This dilemma highlights the limitations of barter and the need for a more flexible medium of exchange. This predicament is why money was introduced. The butcher can sell his meat to whomever is a willing customer in the market, and then use the money to purchase bread from the baker. Money, thus, serves as a universally accepted medium that facilitates exchange even when direct barter is not possible. And what if the butcher doesn't want bread, but rather cheese? He can go to the market and buy cheese with the money he earned from selling his meat. This flexibility is crucial in a dynamic economy where needs and wants continuously evolve. In this way, people are able to specialize in their respective crafts or fields, another kind of division of labor. This specialization is not just about improving efficiency within a single factory but is a principle that extends to the entire economy. A division of labor increases productivity, which in turn gives rise to the market where craftsmen can trade surplus produce. This market, powered by the division of labor and the use of money, is fundamental to the economic development and prosperity of societies, enabling a complex web of exchanges that support specialization, innovation, and growth. Key idea 2. For a nation's wealth, the creation of tradable goods through labor is more important than gold reserves. At one time, nations believed that economic prosperity depended primarily on how much gold and silver they hoarded. This strategy, known as mercantilism, profoundly shaped 18th-century economic thinking. The underlying idea was simple yet deeply ingrained. Accumulate as much of these precious metals as possible to establish a nation's wealth and power. Mercantilism, therefore, advocated for a positive balance of trade, where the value of exports far exceeds that of imports, ostensibly increasing a nation's treasure. Additionally, governments restricted imports through trade tariffs to stop money from flowing out of the country, while at the same time encouraged exports through subsidies, so that money from other nations would flow into the country. This practice, termed protectionism, aimed to shield domestic industries from foreign competition by making imported goods more expensive and exporting domestically produced goods more competitive abroad. The rationale was that by limiting imports and boosting exports, a nation could increase its wealth in the form of gold and silver. This thinking, however, rested on two false premises. The first false premise was the assumption that gold and silver were the all-important indicators of wealth, the ultimate yardstick against which a nation's prosperity was measured. In reality, these precious metals are tradable commodities, just like grain or meat, whose value is subject to change based on market demands and not inherently indicative of a nation's overall economic health or capability. Second, it was believed that nations could only prosper through the impoverishment of their neighbors. This zero-sum view of the world economy held that for one country to gain wealth, another must necessarily lose it. Yet, the truth is that nations will unquestionably grow richer through trade, even if their neighbors are also rich and prosperous. This is because trade allows for the specialization of labor, the exchange of goods and services that are produced most efficiently, thus benefiting all parties involved in the trade. Far more important than gold and silver is labor, as only labor can produce materials or services that are tradable. This recognition underscores the fact that the wealth of a nation is not merely its stockpile of precious metals but rather its capacity to produce goods and services that others value. Labor, and the goods and services it produces, is the real wealth of a nation. This is why the amount of labor invested into producing an item reflects its true value, a concept that pivots away from the mercantilist obsession with gold and silver. Let's take a closer look at why producing things is worthwhile for society. Producing pins, for example, results in three kinds of income. Workers are compensated for their labor through wages, a direct payment for their time and effort. A factory owner is compensated by the profits of selling pins, which is the surplus value after accounting for all costs of production, including labor. And the owner of the land the factory is built on is compensated through rent, or return on providing the physical space necessary for production. The product of all labor is known as stock. Two things happen to stock. Part of it is consumed immediately to sustain the owner. But part of it can also be employed to produce revenue on its own, in which case it is called capital. Capital, therefore, becomes a tool for further production. If the capital stays with the owner, in the form of a pin sharpening machine, then it is fixed capital, directly contributing to the production process without being consumed. If the capital must leave the hands of the owner to generate a profit, like the stocks of a merchant, then it is circulating capital. This capital is used to buy and sell, facilitating the exchange of goods and thereby generating profit through trade. Both forms of capital are essential for the economic growth and development of a nation. In sum, it is not a nation's gold and silver reserves that determine its wealth, but rather its ability to produce tradable goods. This shift in understanding, from valuing metals to valuing productive capacity, marked a significant departure from mercantilism and laid the groundwork for modern economic thought. The real measure of a nation's prosperity is found in its productive activities, the goods and services it can produce and exchange in the global marketplace. Key idea 3. The invisible hand, at work. Acting in your own self-interest can actually benefit society as a whole. Many people consider selflessness a virtue, viewing acts of generosity and altruism as the pinnacle of ethical behavior. This perspective holds that putting others before oneself is the hallmark of a moral life. Yet, in contrast to this view, acting in one's self-interest is not only beneficial for the individual but also for the whole nation. This counterintuitive idea suggests that pursuing one's own goals and desires can lead to positive outcomes for the wider community. Let's explore why this may be the case. At the core of human behavior is a natural tendency towards self-interest. This instinctual drive, deeply embedded in our psychology, is what propels us to seek our own welfare and satisfaction. It is this self-interest, not benevolence toward other people, which motivates us to trade and engage in economic activities. The exchange of goods and services is not primarily driven by a desire to help others but by the aim to improve one's own situation. Your local butcher or grocer doesn't offer you meat or produce out of kindness, but out of self-interest. That is, they're interested in the money you pay them for their goods. This reality does not diminish the value of the transaction but rather highlights the mutual benefit inherent in trade. Each party receives something they value more than what they give up, leading to increased satisfaction on both sides. This same self-interest also drives them to try to always offer high-quality products, for otherwise, you might take your business elsewhere. The desire to maintain and grow their customer base compels vendors to uphold high standards of quality. In doing so, they not only secure their own economic well-being but also contribute to the overall quality of goods available in the market. Thinking of their own long-term self-interest prevents them also from abusing customers by charging exorbitant prices or offering low-quality products. The fear of losing customers to competitors acts as a natural check on exploitative practices, fostering a more equitable and trustworthy marketplace. This self-regulation is a benefit of trade. It also means that government regulation is only needed when this self-regulation is not sufficient to prevent merchants from abusing customers, indicating a secondary role for external oversight in ensuring fair trade practices. An individual's self-interest can also help society as a whole. When we have capital to invest, we first of all prefer to put it in domestic industries over foreign ones, as this feels more secure. This preference for local investment supports the growth and development of the domestic economy, creating jobs and fostering innovation within the country. Second, since we are self-serving, we will always invest our capital in a way that will produce the most gain for us. This drive for personal gain leads to the efficient allocation of resources, as capital flows to those industries and ventures where it can be used most productively. Even though both these actions are selfish, they actually can help increase societal revenue as a whole. More capital is put into domestic industry, and capital is given to successful interests that in turn produce more revenue. This cyclical process of investment and return fuels economic growth and raises the standard of living for everyone. Since increased revenue comes from increased production, our capital investment essentially is guiding society to produce more in general, which results in even more wealth for the nation. This mechanism, where personal self-interest leads to collective prosperity, underpins the concept of the invisible hand, described by economist Adam Smith. It's as though an invisible hand is leading us to promote society's interests, though it was never our individual intention. This metaphor illustrates how individual actions, driven by self-interest, can inadvertently result in the betterment of society as a whole, demonstrating the complex interplay between personal motives and communal benefits. Key idea 4. A free market maximizes economic growth, so the role of government in it should be limited. So, as we know it's good for individuals to act in their own interest, where does this leave the government? This question brings us to the heart of a long-standing debate about the extent of government involvement in economic activities. The consensus among many economists and philosophers, drawing heavily from the principles laid out by Adam Smith and his notion of the invisible hand, suggests that the role of government should be limited to only a few responsibilities. First and foremost, a government should protect society from violence or invasion by maintaining a standing army of professional soldiers, even during peacetime. This foundational duty ensures the security and sovereignty of a nation, providing a stable environment where individuals can pursue their interests without fear of external threats or internal turmoil. It should also ensure the rule of law by enforcing legal rights and punishing crimes. The establishment of a clear and fair legal framework is crucial for maintaining social order and protecting the rights of citizens. By ensuring justice is served and rights are protected, the government creates an environment of trust and reliability necessary for economic transactions and personal security. Furthermore, a government should build and maintain public works, those particularly that are too complicated or costly for individuals to maintain, such as roads and bridges. Infrastructure is the backbone of a nation's economy, facilitating the movement of goods and people. Projects like these, which require significant investment and coordination, are best managed at the governmental level to ensure accessibility and fairness. What's more, the state should also facilitate commerce or education, such as providing universal basic schooling. Education empowers individuals with the knowledge and skills needed to participate effectively in the economy and society. By investing in education, the government lays the groundwork for innovation, productivity, and economic growth. Beyond these areas, a government should not tread, as it would impact economic growth negatively. The argument here is that excessive government intervention, especially in economic affairs, can stifle innovation, lead to inefficiencies, and burden citizens with unnecessary regulations and taxes. So rather than the government taxing or regulating commerce, it should facilitate a free market, where buyers and sellers can buy, sell and trade freely across borders on any prices mutually agreed upon. The idea is that the market, guided by the collective decisions of its participants, can allocate resources more efficiently and innovatively than centralized planning can. No trade tariffs or restrictions, such as under mercantilism, should exist. These practices not only hamper economic growth by limiting trade but also lead to retaliatory measures from other nations, further constricting the flow of goods and services. In a free market, taxation should be minimized to cover only the cost of the government's limited responsibilities. Each individual should contribute taxes in proportion to his income, ensuring that the burden of financing public services is shared equitably among the populace. Moreover, those who benefit the most from government services, whether through direct use or economic advantage, should bear a proportional share of the tax burden. A free market maximizes economic growth because individuals tend to know better than the government what's good for them, and consequently what's good for society. This principle is illustrated by the example of wine production in Scotland versus France. The climate and conditions in France are far more suited to viticulture, making it more cost-effective to produce wine there than in Scotland, where it would require expensive greenhouses. Based on the old maxim that one should never make at home something which is cheaper to buy, any individual would understand that producing wine in Scotland is senseless. This example highlights how the free market, through the mechanism of comparative advantage, guides resources to their most efficient uses, benefiting all parties involved. And yet, under mercantilism, the government would have wanted to avoid imported wine and encourage wine exports, so it still would have tried to produce Scottish wine. This kind of policy, rooted in the desire to accumulate wealth through trade surpluses, often leads to inefficient and costly outcomes. A free market helps us avoid such costly mistakes by allowing the natural flow of goods and services based on demand, quality, and cost-effectiveness, rather than on arbitrary government directives. This approach not only fosters economic efficiency and innovation but also promotes international cooperation and peace through trade. Final summary. Productivity in society is maximized by instituting a division of labor that allows individuals to specialize. The resulting surplus can then be traded or invested according to an individual's self-interest. This also promotes the best interests of society, which is why the government should stand aside and allow society to prosper through a free market.
Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more book-related content.